I got you, sir. Hello. Hello, gentlemen. Durand. Yeah. She is. All right. All right. Good to see you all again. This last day of September. The last day that will be covering what, Mr. Clinch? What will I be covering? What am I going to talk about?
Something religion violence.
Sure.
Yeah, good observation.
Sure. Yes, sir. But given the month, what are we coming to the end of? Yes, Hispanic Heritage Month. So this is our last person I'm going to talk about. The servant of God, Maria Belén Guzmán Florit, otherwise known as Mother Dominga. Mother Dominga. Born in 1897 in Puerto Rico. So before Congress made Puerto Rican citizens, but I'm sure she was naturalized because she never left Puerto Rico. She died there in 1993. So an old lady, almost 100 years old. And clearly a sister. And she founded her own order of sisters, the Dominican Sisters of Fatima. She's the foundress. Dominican. Yes, they're named after their founder, just like the Franciscans are named after the guy who founded them, right? The Franciscan Martyrs of Georgia. And I told you, who was the guy who founded the Franciscans? What was his name? What was his name? Of the Franciscans. Lazarus. The Franciscans. The Franciscans? Who's the name of the guy? What do you think?
Oh no, so they got cooked by Guale Native Americans.
The that's right, you remember the Guale Indians, right? Yeah. But Franciscans, named after a man's name.
Something Francis.
What, sir?
Francis.
Francis! Something Francis. Francis! Franciscans! St. Francis of Assisi. Italian dude.
Yeah.
Now, the Dominicans were a group that were founded by, they're named after, or they're known by the name of the founder of their group, the Dominicans. Whoops. Which was what? What was his name? Of the Dominicans. What was the name of the guy who founded the Dominicans? Dominicans. If we follow the same line of thinking as the Franciscans. The Dominicans, this part. Yes. What do you think? Not sure? It's Haran. The Dominicans. The Franciscans, yes. What? Thank you, Mr. Rand. Dominic! Hence the Dominicans. Dominic Guzman. Who was Hispanic? The Spanish man who founded a group that is commonly known as the Dominicans after his name. But that's not their official title. Just like the Franciscans, that's not their official title, even though they're called the Franciscans. Their official title is the Order of... Are you looking it up?
No.
No, of course. Well, at least they're honest. You know. The order of Mr. Ruddle. The Franciscans are the order of what? Don't look it up, please. Just tell me you don't know. You don't know.
I'm looking at my notes to see if I have it.
Oh, okay. I apologize, sir.
What was
Too
Can you
judgmental.
restate your?
The Franciscans. What's the name? What's their official name? The official name of the Franciscans.
The Georgia Martyrs?
Nope. The order of. The order of. I don't think I asked it on my quiz, but it's too late to ask. Well, no, I could ask this on the next quiz since I'm bringing it up now. Yeah. There we go, Miss Krause. The order of friars. Friars. Okay. Finish it off for me, Mr. Bracy. You're nodding your head like, yeah, that's right.
I was
Right.
I was like making sure I remembered that.
Yeah. Friars Minor, the Lesser Brothers. And so the official name of the Dominicans is the Order of Preachers. The Order of Preachers. Because that's why he founded them, to go out and preach the gospel. Yes. Men, but her group is for women. So she wanted to follow the example of St. Dominic Guzman and his religious group. So they're Dominicans in spirit. However, she dedicates it to the Our Lady of Fatima, the Dominican Sisters of Fatima. The Fatima is Jasmine. Yes. Anyone know what Fatima is? Anyone go to a Catholic school and have statues of Our Lady of Fatima all over the place? Our Lady of Fatima. Well, you went to a Catholic school, right? Yeah. Any statues of Mary dressed all in white, usually, her hands in prayer with a rosary draped over it. Our Lady of Fatima. Okay. Apparently no one talked about it, right? Sure. Why'd they creep you out?
Oh no, I was young.
Well, Catholic religion is creepy. They have some very creepy elements. Hold on to corpses and cut them up. Stick them in and do all sorts of weird stuff. Kiss the bones of a dead man. It's easy. Fatima, Portugal. Fatima, Portugal, Miss Krause. Fatima, Portugal, a town in Portugal, where apparently a few shepherd children said that they saw a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of Christ, appear to them, give them visions, give them messages. And apparently the word got out, and then, everybody and his brother showed up to see what was going on. We couldn't see anything. The visions were just for the children. They weren't for any of the private revelation, apparently. But yeah, some weird stuff did happen. I mean, the sun supposedly danced in the sky and moved around in the sky, which was rather unusual. The sun would move like that. And tens of thousands of people witnessed it, even reporters and people that you might think would be very skeptical. They admitted that, yeah, the sun was doing weird stuff. And people took that as a sign that something supernatural was going on. And the church as well. It doesn't add anything to the Christian faith. You don't have to believe. You don't have to pray to Our Lady of Fatima or anything like that. You don't have to believe that anything supernatural happened. It's not required. But the church just recognized that something supernatural likely did happen. Okay, all right. But the messages and the visions were for the kids, not for me, so good for them. They all have been declared saints. But you'll see statues of people have a devotion to Our Lady of Fatima. You'll see it, in Catholic schools, and people, they add some of the prayers that she taught the children to the rosary. Trying to remember. It shows shame on me. Well, Eastern Catholics we don't have the rosary, but I did have it when I was growing up, but I haven't prayed it so long that you forget, if you don't say it. I remember when it said, anyways, that's right. Oh my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of your mercy. Apparently that's one of the prayers that the Blessed Mother taught to the children and told them to add it to their recitation of the Holy Rosary. So people do. You don't have to, but. So here's a picture of the old girl, looking good. She's a servant of God, so I hope she progresses. But yeah, so they opened up the Diocese of Ponce and Puerto Rico opened up her cause. I really couldn't find much information about her. Maybe I have to go back and look, but this is about it. Another picture of her and a news story about some earthquake in Puerto Rico. Anyways, I guess it affected their convent or something. But there she is, very happy woman. God bless her. So I asked Mother Dominga to please pray for us, especially those of us in this class who might be of Hispanic descent. And certainly all the people of Hispanic descent in our country, that God may bless them and pour out his loving grace upon them, give them good and fulfilling lives. Amen. I didn't open my PowerPoint. Okay, sorry. Where are we? How is religion study? Oh, yes, psychology. Okay, psychology. We're talking about the Oedipus complex, so that'll be fun. Sex, I always find sex is fun. It usually wakes people up. Unless you're too tired for it. Hey, ask your parents. Yes. It is writing. Religion and violence. Psychology. All right, I was talking about Freud, and I kind of, wink, wink, Ms. Durant, read Oedipus Rex during the weekend. At least I did the Cliff's Notes version. I will eventually, sometime during this semester, read the whole thing, but I was going to read it, and I saw how long it was. I'm like,
It's a
But I mean, I'm glad I read about it because, you know, I only knew secondhand what was going on with it. I didn't realize. Kind of funny because it never actually tells, well, what I told you, which is what is the basis of the play. The play is that this man, well, the play itself is this man Oedipus is king of Thebes in Greece, of the city in Greece. And there's a plague in the city. Okay, people are dying from some disease or something. So what's the source of the plague? You know, basically, Mr. Saunders, who did something wrong? Who angered the gods so that the gods are now punishing us? We got to find out, because then if we find out, we can set things right. Okay? We can make that person the scapegoat. Put all the sins of the community on that person, because that person is to blame, right? Person offended the gods. And so we kill that person, exile that person, whatever, we satisfy the gods. And so the plague will end. Interesting. I mention that specifically because when we talk later about violence, we'll be talking about theories of violence. And one of them is René Girard. And he comes up, this Frenchman, who is famous because he came up with this idea, plumbed the depths of the idea of the scapegoat, the person who is to blame, who's guilty. And so if we just get rid of him or her, everything will be all right, right? Life will be fine if he or she is no more, right? Oh, we've seen this recently in our own society, right? I don't want him to be president. Boom! Let's get rid of him. He's no more. Everything is fine. Right? Same kind of idea. Scapegoating. Kill the guilty person. Or do something. Exile. You don't have to necessarily kill them. But anyway, so Oedipus is trying to figure out who did what that was wrong in his city. And as the story goes along, or the play goes along, it's really kind of interesting. I want to get it straight in my own head so I don't misrepresent it, because there's stuff that's going on in the play that Sophocles never tells us about. It's assumed. It kind of comes out in the acting of the play, but you never see it actually. Like you don't see, like I told you, the whole thing with Oedipus is that he kills his father and he marries his mother and has sex with her. But you don't know that he doesn't kill his father in the play, but you find out that he did. All right, but it's not described by Sophocles at all. It's just talked about. But apparently, in trying to they find or they heard the story that there's some man who is said to have murdered his father murder his father, to commit murder or something. And so Oedipus is like, well, we have to find out who this man is. Well, he's the guy that killed this person who happens to be the queen's husband all this time ago, but we don't know who it is. Of course, it's Oedipus, himself, but he doesn't know. Okay, so we have to find out. Can someone identify him? Well, yeah, there's a shepherd who was there when this guy, his name is Laius, who was the king of Thebes before Oedipus killed him. He was there and he saw what happened. He saw who killed him. So he would know. He would be able to identify the person, just give a description of the person. Okay. Well, we don't know, and because no one was there, but it's mentioned in the play, is that apparently, Oedipus was riding along on his chariot and encountered this guy Laius, who happened to be his father from of old. But as I told you, there was a prophecy. There was some kind of prophecy or an oracle from some, shrine, a religious shrine. He would go to these places and try to get, it's like getting your palm read, say, people will go for advice, should I marry this person? Or, should we go to war and stuff like that? And there would be someone at this shrine who would usually inhale some intoxicant, some kind of incense or something, and would go into a trance and then would say something, which oftentimes meant nothing. It was oftentimes gibberish, but people kind of interpret it the way they wanted to. And this person gave an oracle to this guy Laius and his wife that, their son was going to kill them, or kill the king, kill Laius. And so Laius was like, well, that's not going to happen, so we got to get rid of the kid, get rid of the baby, kill him. And tells the mother to kill the kid, Oedipus, as a baby, but she can't do it. So, eventually Oedipus,
They strap his ankles so at the top of the mountain. Then someone pries him and then unstrap him. And then he waves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, the mother was going to expose him, which, that's, if you didn't have the stomach to, break a baby's neck, then, you'd leave them out in a forest or on a mountain where it was cold, and so they'd freeze to death or something or the animals will get them. Anyway, try not to think about that one. But anyways, called exposure. Yeah, so they do that to Oedipus. The mother does that till she can't bring herself to kill him. And yeah, some shepherd or somebody like that finds the baby and saves it and takes him to another city where he is given to the king there, and he grows up thinking they're his family. They're his family. He doesn't know that really this guy Laius and his wife Jocasta is her name, who are in Thebes, are his real parents. But, so, all right. They're trying to avoid this prophecy, but it kind of becomes self-fulfilling anyways. It happens anyways. If the fates want something to happen, it's going to happen. So I'm condensing a lot of this and cutting a lot of stuff out. But nevertheless, what happens eventually is, don't ask how or why, but Oedipus is in his chariot traveling down, and he's around Thebes, and he come to like an intersection or something, or a part of the road where, he encounters another guy in a chariot, and one guy in the chariot is an older dude, turns out to be Laius the king, and he thinks that he has the right of way and should be able to cross on the road, and this younger guy should get out of his way, but he thinks Oedipus is being rude, because Oedipus won't get out of the way. So he picks up like his cane or something to hit Oedipus, and Oedipus shoves Laius out of his chariot, and as he shoves him out of his chariot, I guess Laius hits his head or something, and he's killed. Of course, again, Oedipus doesn't know that it's his father. He doesn't recognize him. He hasn't seen him since he was a baby, so he didn't recognize him. And the father didn't recognize Oedipus. So there, the prophecy, the oracle was fulfilled. He did still kill his father. But then there's another prophecy that's given later sometime that says that he will marry his mother, which of course is incest, which was a terrible crime in the ancient world. One of the worst things you could do would be to sleep with your parents, or for a parent to have sex with his or her child. So of course the playwright's right about it. You know, it's like, okay, hey, let's make a movie about it, you know? Because it's so terrible, you know? So, well, of course, because everyone will show up to the theater, won't they? Won't they, Mr. Henry? Sorry. Yeah, even though it's so horrible and you're not supposed to ever talk about it, but hey, they're putting on an incest play at the local theater. You going? Oh yeah, I'm there, baby. Front and center. So anyways, so somehow that comes up, and so, you know, Oedipus is kind of happy because he's like, well, anyways, Oedipus ends up in Thebes, and he marry, and they find, and the Jocasta, of course, is in mourning because her husband has been killed, but she doesn't know by whom. No one knows who did it. Okay, no one knows who Oedipus is, and she just stumbles into Oedipus, and they fall in love. No, that's right. He solves the riddle of the Sphinx. Don't worry about what that is. But there's a contest of wits, which he wins. He's able to solve this intellectual puzzle, which saves the city from a monster. This monster, the Sphinx. And so they make him their king. And so, of course, he has to marry Jocasta, who herself doesn't know that he's her child, because, you know, she hasn't seen him since he was a baby. How would she know? And, you know, as I said, they you know, come together. They even have some children, you know. And you get little, you know, and there are always little hints, like they have other prophets who come out and say, you know, the man who, because Oedipus, you know, is still looking. So that's how Oedipus became king. So, but as he's looking for who the person is that brought the plague on the city, you know, there's another prophet who comes and says, well, I can tell you, I know who the man is. You don't want to know because it's you. Anyway, so, and they get into a fight. You know, Oedipus insults the prophet and says he's a moron and stuff. But you know, the prophet's like, but you know, the person who did it, the prophet doesn't say outright, it's you, Oedipus. He's like, you know, the person who did it, you'll find, you know, is both brother to his sister as well as father, and both son to his mother as well as spouse, and so kind of hinting like, you know, come on, Dumbo, figure it out. You know? Finally, they get the shepherd who was at the kerfuffle at the intersection, and they said, Oedipus is like, okay, describe who this is. And the guy starts describing, okay, there was this one man, and he looked like this and looked like that. Now, Jocasta is there, and she's kind of like, she's figuring it out for Oedipus, like, that sounds like Oedipus. And she remembers the prophecy about the child will kill the father. Well, who killed the father? This dude she's never seen before from out of town. And she's like putting 2 and 2 and 4 and 4 and 6 and 6 together. And she's like, oh no. And she starts trying to tell Oedipus to stop asking questions, basically. Stop asking questions. Let's just forget about who brought the plague. And Oedipus is like, no, we must find the malefactor. We must find the person. So he must be punished. Well, Jocasta decides, okay, she leaves. She goes back into the house and actually kills herself. She hangs herself because she's figured it out. Oedipus still hasn't figured it out. And then finally he does start piecing it together that sounds like me, and there was this prophecy of killing the father. But then there was this later prophecy about I would also boink my mother. So that would mean if Laius was my father and the guy I killed, he had to be my father, then and she was his wife, then she was but. And so he goes into the house to find Jocasta. She's, of course, dead already. She's killed herself. And so he takes, like, 2 of the, like little what do they call them? Not prongs, but needles or something that women would stick in their hair and stuff like that. He takes those needles and he gouges out his eyes and makes himself blind. Doesn't kill himself, but he blinds himself, and then he has himself exiled from the city, so that he's the scapegoat, because he's the one who brought the plague. And so he's exiled and has to leave the city, because that's the only way to get rid of the plague, to satisfy the gods for what he's done, which is murder his parent, which is also a very bad crime, sin, and then sleep with a relative, incest, which is another very bad sin in the eyes of the gods. But then Sophocles writes another play, right? Yeah. Well, also Oedipus at Colonna. Oedipus Colonus. Yeah, where after there are three plays. There's Oedipus Rex, where we kind of jump into the whole thing. Then after he blinds himself, he's not dead, but then Sophocles wrote another play to describe what happens after and the eventual death of Oedipus. And then Antigone, yes, his daughter Antigone, who's also his sister. Kind of raunchy stuff in the ancient world, Miss Rogers. They had the raunch going. They didn't pull any punches. There's nothing new. I mean, there are some things that are new, but people have thought about stuff before and written about it. What does this have to do with Sigmund Freud? Sigmund Freud pulls this play, this story, out of antiquity for his own idea. He thought that, everything was reduced to him to the sex instinct. We have various needs. We have various drives, as he called them. And one of them is the biological drive, the need to reproduce, which necessitates sexual activity. And there were other drives as well, the drive, for food and stuff like that, to feed ourselves. The drive, our fear of death is another drive. But the sex drive is the biggest one, I think, for him. And so, when he was, he would talk, his philosophy or his manner of doing counseling was called psychodynamism. Psychodynamism. All right? Suke, spirit, and dunamis, and power. So the power of the spirit. And basically, I can't give you his whole psychological theory. It might be helpful, but the human psyche or the mind was structured in such a way, basically, that there were three parts to it. Okay, the mind has three interrelated subsystems. The superego, the ego, and the id. Right? And they're related to each other. They're all in the same mind, but the mind is divided up into these three things. The id is probably the most basic. It's the irrational part, the baby part, one might say. One might say that, if we wanted to put it into other language, the id is the baby, the superego is the parent, and then the ego is the self, which kind of brings the parental aspect and the childlike aspect together. But the id is the irrational drives. Baby doesn't care that, you've been at work all day, you're tired, you're sleepy. Baby just knows it's hungry, right? Or that it's pooped itself and the baby needs a diaper changed. Babies don't care. Babies are babies. Completely irrational. The need is immediate. Feed me, clean me up, hold me, whatever. That's the id, the irrational needs and drives. I just need to do it. Okay? So that baby part of us that cries, I want it, Even when you have another part of your psyche, your mind, that is telling you, is more rational, is telling you,
You shouldn't do this, or you can't do this, you know? I want to go out and party with my friends because it's fun. It makes me feel good. I enjoy myself. I deserve it. Okay, yeah, but you got a paper to write for class that you've been putting off, you know? That little voice, you know, right? I'm not listening to that voice. Shut up. You know, that's kind of like your superego. It's kind of like a conscience in a way, a quasi-conscience. It's laying down the law like a parent, you know? Well, you know, Johnny, you could do that, you know, have a good time, but you know, you got this paper due that you should have been working on, but you weren't. Lays down the law, kind of like a parent. So that's the superego. All right, so you've got two conflicting things going on. You've got the id and the superego that are in competition with each other. Okay, sometimes they're in balance, but a lot of times, and some people they're not. You know, like they say, some people with mental illness, certain types of mental illness, they have what's the word? They have not control issues, but there's another word for it, another expression. Well, anyways, maybe emotional control issues. But maybe you've known some people like that. You know, if they get angry, they get enraged. You know, or they kind of, if they get, you can maybe have people, you know, they can fly out of control or something. They lose control, like a baby does, you know. And so, when a baby starts crying, I always, if you're at church or something, and you hear some kid, okay, wait for it. You know, there's always that pause, right? It's like there's first a little bit of crying. I don't like this. And then you just wait for it. It'll come. And with a lot of babies, a lot of kids, it peters out, you know, it goes. But then, you know, there are some kids that just like continuing. You can see the kid starting all over again. The kid just will not be consoled. Yeah, I know, but okay, but psychologically you're starting to see there's something. There's something that needs to be addressed as the kid is maturing because they're not letting go of whatever is bothering them. And some people, the id can be out of control. And some people, the superego is out of control. You know, people who are very, I guess that would be like someone like me, obsessive compulsive, very concerned about rules and doing things in the proper way. If you don't wash your hands a certain number of times in a certain way, then they're not really clean. So the ego is bringing these together. This is the integration. It's our conscious self, our consciousness, which kind of judges between the two, you know, which the ego kind of sets the balance. Yeah, I can still go, it thinks to itself. It trying to brings the two together, tries to, I guess, create a synthesis out of the antithesis, right, Mr. Melendez, you know? I'd like to go out and party a little bit, but I do want to get this paper out of my way, this assignment out of my way. So what can party a little bit, go out for a little bit, you know, or do something before you go and then go. Okay, that's the ego. Kind of bringing some logic and some sense to the competition between the id and the superego. But mental illness comes about because the id and the ego is not functioning properly, and either the id or the superego is out of control. It's imbalanced. Now, what's going on in the id and the superego is that things, especially the id, things are being recorded unconsciously. So the ego is your consciousness, the things that you kind of know are going on inside you. But then there are things that are influencing you that you're totally unconscious of. They're subconscious. They're Ms. Ying, latent. They're there. Like, you know, for example, I mean, not just this is an example that comes into my head. I don't mean anything by it, so don't take it that way. But, a guy is married to a woman for, say, 10 years and then finds out all of a sudden he's gay. Well, it's not all of a sudden. It's latent, but you could have probably told before. Maybe there's certain things that would come out at times. Well, maybe because the guy was always looking at gay porn or something. Or was always going out to hook up with other guys. I don't know, but it's just like, but I'm not gay. But if you asked him, he'd be like, I'm not gay though, I'm not homosexual. But dude, I just found you in bed with another guy. You're having, well, I didn't, what am I doing there? Oh, latent, Or a Freudian might say, well, Dr. Dunn, why did you bring up that example specifically? Ooh, we got some things to look at, But that's what is going on with latency, Why are the common one, the stereotypical one for Freudians is, you hate your father, and you love your mother. Oedipus complex. So here we're getting to Oedipus, okay? But anyway, before I get to Oedipus, let me just say this. Psychodynamism is that the human behavior is based on these set of conscious and unconscious motivations. Yes, if once you can recognize the unconscious motivations, bring them up into the conscious, you can remove them. You can confront them and remove them. So psychodynamic method was all about, this is the stereotypical thing you see in movies and stuff like that. You probably imagine when you go to see a shrink, he lays you out or she lays you out on a couch. Yes, you lay down on a couch and then the shrink just sits there in a chair and you just talk, right? All you do, free association. The shrink will say, talk about your mother. And you go on for a whole hour talking about your mother. And the guy or the woman says nothing. The Freudian is just sitting there, usually smoking a cigar, if it's a true stereo. But not today, because cigars are bad. The cigars. But I don't want to get lung cancer. So I have to stop smoking. Anyways. Get thee behind me. Nah, that's okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. Anyway, so what's going on there, and this can take years of doing this before a Freudian psychoanalyst will actually come up with some kind of profile of what your problem is. Because it's free association. Basically, the psychodynamic psychologist will throw out something, a topic for you to talk about, will let you talk about it, and notice what kind of comes up. Maybe you encountered this as well, word association. We've seen it, like, okay, I say mother, what do you say? Mother, sex, well, of course, Chick-fil-A. Mother, milk, father, pain, I don't know, baseball, happy, it's word, you're bringing, that's a tool that a psychodynamic psychologist will use to kind of start bringing out what's in the unconscious, and the fact that you associated maybe you did and I do. Your mother with milk, breasts, possibly sexual, father, pain, don't like. What does that tell us? But you can't get it all in one session. As I said, this can sometimes take years of psychodynamic therapy for the psychologist or psychiatrist to finally come up with, okay, this is what I think. And it's usually, you want to hate your father and want to shtup your mother. That's what Freud, that's what he thought. That's why that's where the Oedipus complex comes into play. He used that as the description of what he was seeing in his clients, which were usually women, middle-class women, and some people have criticized Freud for actually misidentifying what was kind of like child abuse, sexual child abuse. It was not, oh, I desire my mother, or my father, or whatever. It's like, what are the parents doing to the kid? They're describing child abuse. he couldn't handle that, so he said, he intellectualizes it as, yes, it must be this, like the Oedipus complex, you know? That at a very early age, and I mean very early, like as an infant still, a baby already has sexual urges, and the sexual urge is for the mother to have sex with her. But the father is in the way, right? Because he notices that the mother, the baby notices the baby, right, Ms. Lazarus? Yeah. Yeah, the baby that just pooped his diaper. You know? The baby's figuring this out. The baby realizes that the mother only keeps her sexual actions for the father. I don't know how the kid knows this unless the kid's like a peeping Tom or something, like the kid's in the room or something. It's like taking video. I don't know, but somehow the kid knows that the mother keeps her sexual favors for the father, which the baby, of course, wants because the baby is sexually attracted to the mother. Hence, the baby knows that the father, and this is, of course, a male baby I'm talking about, not female. The boy baby realizes the father has to be gotten out of the way in order to have the mother completely to himself. But the boy baby is scared of the father because he's bigger than the baby, you know, stronger than the baby. And most importantly for Freud, the father has a bigger penis than the baby's. Which is where we get the idea, if you've ever heard of it, penis envy. If you've ever wondered where the idea of penis envy, it comes from Freud. The baby envies the longer or the larger penis of the father, which shows that the father has more power than him, so that the father can hurt him and can pleasure his mother in ways that he can't. Yes, again, this is the baby playing, you know, little babies you see, you know, playing with their own doo-doo, who are going through this whole, I really, Ms. Park, I smell the musings of an Austrian doctor who is some weird ideas. Anyways, so the boy baby has to just accept this. The father is stronger. He's got a larger, the baby does not. And so it's not going to, basically the baby comes to the realization that it's not going to happen with my mom. And how the boy baby resolves this determines his psychological health for the rest of his life. Okay? So, you know, for example, if he doesn't resolve it properly, doesn't just simply accept, okay, my father's over me, he's for my mom, it's never going to happen, then, you know, he'll develop as just a psychologically healthy person. But if not, they might be overly needy, you know, like guys who hang on to their mother all the time. They're always, you know, like still living with their mother. I am.
Are you the main one?
I am. I'm a man-child. I'm a man-child, yes. You know, but yeah, needy people, overly needy men that hang all over their mothers, men that hate their fathers, can never, you know, can kind of make a connection with their dads. So Freud would put that all to this. It's the everything was to the Oedipus complex. Now, most psychologists nowadays learn about this when they study systems. And those of you who are doing like social work, anyone doing social work, studies, well, yeah, might take a course in systems where you go over psychological theories. There are still psychodynamic psychologists around. In fact, the one who diagnosed me with OCD was a Freudian. Nice guy, Dr. Nordze, very nice guy. I wouldn't have wanted him as a counselor, but as a doctor, he was, you know, he recognized I was not depressed. I was actually depressed because I was OCD. So they're still around, but most psychologists don't. They learn about it, but they don't. I mean, they think this is like nonsense, this Oedipus, because children and they study it, you know, are children really acting this? Is a baby, an infant, maybe a 2-year-old thinking in these sorts of categories and reasoning through these things or reacting to it doesn't seem so. When people have tried to test, which is the hallmark of the scientific method, test the idea, that doesn't seem to be
the relationship at all. But I can understand why Freud thought that. I mean, yeah, you've seen little kids, they push away from daddy and they want mommy to hold on to them. They're always, little boy is always grabbing onto mommy, but when dad comes around, you're like, no, no, no. All right, fine, To me, that I always thought that was just a kid being a kid, whatever. Eventually, the kid wants to hang out with the dad because the dad becomes interesting. At that point, he's not interesting. I mean, you spent 9 months in the womb of this person. You've heard her voice, You've been imbued with the heat of her body for 9 months, You're feeding at her breast, if you still breastfeed, which is also very intimate. I don't think it's sexual, but it's intimate, certainly. Then I would think, obviously, there's going to be a connection that the dad isn't going to have immediately. But it is interesting, like and I've seen this happen, and I've heard this psychologist talk about this, like if I'm holding someone's kid, someone's baby, and I'm playing with the kid, and I'm talking with the kid, and whatever, and the kid's there, but as soon as the dad comes in and speaks, the kid's head will immediately turn to the father, and it'll be totally ignored. It'll ignore whoever is holding on to the kid. They've tested this. It's just interesting, that connection that somehow is there. So, yeah, a lot of people today are not, if you go to a psychologist or a shrink, they're not going to ask you about your relationship with your mother and your father. I mean, they will ask you in a way because, yeah, that those are basic relationships, and parents certainly can do a lot of damage to a child psychologically in how they raise them. So that's certainly part of the history. But they're not going to be like, oh, so did you want to shtup your mother ever? No, they're not going to ask that anymore or ever because it's kind of been put away. Nevertheless, why do we need to know this? Because this is how Freud views everything, and it's how he views religion. This is where religion came from. Religion, in his book, Totem and Taboo, and he sees the evolution of humans as, we were a bunch of apes living in the jungle, male apes and female apes. In his mind, we were polygamous. Well, maybe not polygamous because they probably weren't married, but basically one female primate would be shared by all the other males and have their children, so they would all be related. They would all in some way be both fathers and brothers. Kind of like, a horror film in a way, But eventually, one of the primates favors the female, wants exclusivity over her. So only they will have sex, monogamy. Well, the other primates don't like that, But the other primate is so strong, he's kind of like the king of the primates. They kind of have to kowtow to his wishes. However, they all want human. So eventually, this ends up in violence for Freud. They kill him. They end up killing. They kill the king. They kill the prime human being, whatever, early human being, early hominid. The others get together, his brothers, because they're all committing incest with the female. They rise up and they kill him, but they feel bad about it. They feel bad. Little dad, his own brother, shouldn't have done that, maybe. But we wanted her also for ourselves. We wanted the females for ourselves. So that's how religion develops, in order to kind of assuage their guilt, take away their guilt, perhaps kill daddy gorilla or daddy primate or whatever you want to call him. You kind of honor him now. So he becomes almost like a god in a sense, to make up for what you did to him. So now you honor him. And so you come up with rules and laws like incest laws, taboos. That's why Freud thought that, the incest taboo, you find this in just about every culture on the planet. this comes from this source, this group of primates, because they were committing incest, but it led to violence and death, or they killed the one primate, the king primate. So they have to put up this law, this taboo: do not touch a member of your own family sexually. Doesn't happen anymore. Okay. Let's see if I missed anything. That's pretty much it. So religion comes from violence and trauma, and basically incest in a way. Okay? So you develop rituals to remember this dominant primate. The community develops rituals to remember him, and stuff like that. So that's kind of like where Freud's coming from when it comes to religion. No one, this is all guesswork. Anthropologists, people who are anthropologists study ancient humans and stuff. From what we can know about them, they find no evidence of this. This is Freud's imagination. He's imagining how it could have come about. But he took it seriously. He really believed this is how religion came about. He just imposes his Oedipus complex on ancient humans. But he never seems to think that, well, if my idea is wrong, it's just a theory, right? If my theory is wrong, then maybe I'm reading all the data in a wrong way. And as, the decades have passed since Freud, as I said, no anthropologist, no one asserts this is where religion came from. We don't know necessarily where religion came from, but this ain't it. It ain't this, Freud. That's just nuts, okay? It's in his imagination. Nevertheless, religion, the future of an illusion, which we read from. Forget about Moses. We're going to talk about Moses monotheism. Well, not really, I guess. I don't need to talk about it. He's just basically more of the same. Okay? It's just in this case he focuses on Moses as the leader of the Israelites. This man Moses, who forces the Israelites or convinces them to worship one God, but who is eventually killed by the Israelites. And so, he's killed. And so, the pattern repeats itself in order to kind of make up for that fact that they killed Moses. They make Moses into this great figure, this great lawgiver. So The Future of an Illusion, we have some readings from that. This is the book that Freud wrote on religion, and in which he says that, this quote, religion is born from man's need to make his helplessness tolerable. Okay? Religion comes from is really a response that we make to the pressures of life. One of the first pressures we have to deal with is our sexual drive, and the sexual drive that a baby has for its mother, which leads to hatred and potential violence against the father to get him out of the way. This is why, Freud sees all sorts of sexual obsessiveness within religion. All sorts of, as I said, taboos against incest, having sex outside of marriage, sex between people of the same sex, et cetera, et cetera. This obsession with sex. Religion is obsessed with sex, and that's obvious to him. That's an obsession because, people who are religious in his mind have not fully resolved the Oedipus complex, the pressures exerted by that. Also, humans want to have a relationship. We're beings of relationship. The young baby wants to have a relationship with the mother. And even though there is some hostility towards the father, the baby kind of eventually, by resolving the Oedipus complex, accepts the father's authority, and then that integrates it into the psyche as the superego. Okay? And the superego, this father figure, kind of helps the baby accept its own helplessness. It's helpless to change the situation of what it wants. But even in the larger world, we're helpless. We are helpless. It's a scary thought, but we are helpless.
You know, we're along for the ride. Literally. I mean, we're on the surface of a planet, going wherever it's going. We have no control over where it's going. I mean, we can't even make it rain. I mean, if it just said, like, make it rain outside my window. Not all campus, but just make it rain right outside my window. Should be simple. We know the principles of why it rains, you know. Ice crystals attached to particulate matter in the atmosphere. Up in the atmosphere where it's a lot colder, but as they come lower to where it's warmer, you know, they liquefy and fall. Rain. Or if it's still really cold, it falls, but it's snow. That's why we should be thankful for pollution, actually, not air pollution. You get more clouds. Actually, because that's what holds clouds together, the dirt that's in the air. Good dirt, not bad dirt that we produce. The good dirt that's out there. Particulate matter, we say. But yeah, we know the principles, but how would you go about trying to make just one cloud, rain? Mm-hmm. So we're kind of along for the ride. We try to kind of fool ourselves to not feel so helpless by assuming there's maybe a father figure of the universe who's ultimately in control, ultimately providing some kind of order and justice to this universe. So, you know, if I walk out to my car and get hit by a car and killed by one of you students, not one of you, but who knows? You know, it wasn't just happenstance. There was a purpose to it. Maybe I was being punished for some sin. There's order. And so religion and religious ritual is kind of neurotic. It's a neurosis, which is mental illness. Mental sickness would be a psychosis. Psychosis is mental sickness. It's the difference between, you know, having cancer and having the flu. You know, the flu is the equivalent of, say, a neurosis. You know, we're all a little neurotic. We have our all little eccentricities, little things, you know, like I have to have my coffee cup right here, you know, not there, not over there, you know, because that's it, you know. Or I have to wash my hands every time I touch money or something, because in some cultures, money is considered dirty. So, which it is dirt. But in our culture, we usually don't. But in some other cultures, it's like, if you ever touch money, you got to wash your hands. You got to take your shoes off when you're going into the house. Because it's practical. It tracks in mud and stuff like that. So what? Mud is, unless I checked, dirt and mud were natural. I mean, there's nothing unnatural about it. Well, you just don't want it. Exactly. Why don't you want it? You don't want it there. It bothers you. It's perfectly all right outside there, under the grass, as long as the dirt stays there. But if, you know, they brought the dirt in here, no, that wouldn't seem right. So that's neurosis. Psychosis is, you know, like a cancer on the brain that impinges on the brain. It's really serious. So schizophrenia, you know, stuff like that, where people, the mental, they can't function. The mental issues are such that it's not allowing them to live properly. So, I mean, from Freud's point of view, psychology would help uncover and remove this illusion of religion. Through psychology and the practice of psychodynamism, you'll realize that, you know, your belief in a God or need for religion is really based on your need for certainty, for order in the universe. You know, why is God always angry in the Bible? Well, because your father was always angry and you disliked it. Talked about the Virgin Mary before, Our Lady of Fatima. You know, some places you see more statues of Mary, the mother of Jesus, than Jesus in a Catholic church. You know? So it's praying the rosary to the Virgin Mary. Go to Mary through to Jesus through Mary, used to in the old days. Why? That mother, the Blessed Mother. The Blessed Mother. But, my Lord, Jesus. Jesus is Master, Lord. But Mary is Mother. Not Lady. Well, sometimes she's Our Lady, but even that doesn't sound too off-putting, right, Mr. Ruddle? She's Our Lady. You know, you're not like a dominatrix. So religion, that's his point of view of religion. What can this mean for religion and violence? Okay, well, violence is all over the place. It's in the origins of religion, if you believe Freud's theory about where religion came from in his book Totem and Taboo. You can't disentangle them. And you might say that violence is just a natural part of religion. That's where it comes from. So why should we be surprised by it, right? It has no moral value. It comes, if Freud is right, it comes from our ancient ancestors and what they did to that dominant male way back when they killed him. So violence is right there. Natural. What else can I say? Psychologically, religion might have a positive value that might help us have support against violent responses. We saw that with William James. He's talking about, the sick soul and the healthy soul. Kind of saw both ways that there might be a positive value. Yes, there might be kind of pessimistic religion, but there also might be optimistic religion, which might actually support someone against having a violent response. If you have a more optimistic than pessimistic, could that be the problem? Religious people commit violence because they're pessimistic. They're not. If they're more optimistic, like, yeah, we're being oppressed by this group, and I want to go strap on a bomb and blow them up. But you know what? God's in control. He promises it'll get better. So I might have that. I'd like to see them all get wiped out. But God will do it at the end, at the judgment. So it channels that violent rage, that anger, positively. Maybe it's a more optimistic. Whereas a pessimistic, like, this sucks, it's never going to get better unless God's not going to do anything, so I've got to do something. I got to do something. I don't know. So there is that pessimistic side that could lead someone to a violent response. Otherwise, it might not be so violent. If there's nothing if I think that there's, because people will say they're religious, they trust in God. But there's nothing I can do. Well, if God's in control, what does it matter if there's nothing you can do? Or if you believe that God has everything planned, then isn't it the will of God that you're being oppressed? That God wills everything and is in control? So, if you're resisting against the oppressor, aren't you resisting God? Because the oppressor's working his will, isn't it? Isn't it? Or he or she or... So is violence ingrained in our nature? Right? The leader of the primate horde is violent towards the other members because he wants the female all for himself, but the other members eventually kill the leader. But there is that good function where religion helps to repress violent tendencies. Notice in Freud's theory, if you take Freud's theory, which I don't believe in it, as I've told you, and most psychologists don't, but if I just take his theory as it is and accept it and follow its logic, what happens? It's violence first, not religion, according to his theory. It's the group, have I lost you? But they commit the act of violence, right? They kill the dominant male, right? To get the females, all for themselves, or to share amongst themselves again, right? According to his theory in Totem and Taboo. And then because they're sorry that they did it, because it causes chaos in their community, because now they're all fighting for the attention of the females, they honor the dominant male as a father figure. They worship him. They make him into a god and stuff. They offer him sacrifices and stuff like that. So actually, if you read it, Freud is making an argument in favor of the goodness of religion. Religion develops from violence to actually repress and channel the violent tendencies of the primeval horde, one might say. This horde of primates, this group of primates, which almost destroyed their society. Religion kind of repairs the society. Ooh, I guess Freud didn't think about that one. So maybe you don't want psychology to remove religion. Maybe you want it to reinforce it. People need something, right, Mr. Klitsch? People need something to get up in the morning, go to work and give them something to believe in. All right. Why do I have this on here? Well, this is a psychological study that deals with violence, not so much with religion, but sure, that's the other thing. Ooh, that's interesting, yes. The Milgram Obedience Study. But let me check my time. I just want to make sure that I got enough time. Yeah, I got enough time. Well, actually, no, I don't have enough time. But I'll introduce it, and then we'll watch it on Thursday. But it's a famous study by Stanley Milgram. I didn't put his name on there. Let me write it on the board. Stanley Milgram. Anybody heard of this? The Milgram Obedience Study? Anybody? Ms. Ying? Ms. Ying? Are you directing airplane traffic or something? You come in. American Airlines 407 Heavy. You're clear for takeoff. Roger, so clear for takeoff. Rotate. Anyways. 1963. He was a psychologist, I believe he was, who designed an experiment to study how obedience and authority work. What people would do if they were told by someone in authority to do it. How far would they go if they were told to do something? So he came up with this experiment where you had a group of subjects who were told they were actually participating in an experiment. Actually, they were the subjects of the experiment, but they had an experiment to judge the effect of punishment on learning, how well people learn if there's, a reinforcer, usually a punishing thing, like pain or something like that. So they had it all designed up that, someone would sit there, there'd be someone else who they couldn't see, in another room who would be asked a question, and if the person got it right, okay, the reinforcement was, nothing. It's got it right, good. But if the person got it wrong, then a certain electric shock was given to the person. And it would be increasingly more painful depending on how badly the person was performing in the other room. So in the beginning, it could be just like a slight shock, but if someone kept, getting stuff wrong, then you start increasing it, even to there was a dangerous level, a severe shock level. So how far, ask yourself the question, how far would you go? You've got a person here in a lab coat who looks like, says he's a scientist or someone, or says a PhD, or someone who seems to be an authority figure who says, okay, give the person the shock. They answered the question wrong. Well, would you question that? Should I even give them, why should I cause them pain because they got this question wrong? Okay, I'll cause them a little pain, but would I up the pain if they get it wrong again? Will I go all the way to pain that might actually cause physical damage, maybe even death? Or I'm not sure it will cause death, but it will be a severe shock. How far would you go? If someone told you to, Ms. Cook.
What? I think I read about this in some. I know this experiment. I raised my hand when you said, did anyone learn about it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was turned away. I apologize, Ms. Cook.
I thought there was like a wall, and they did 2 parts of the experiment, and if one of the times
they could see the other person that was on the phone, right?
No, they could never, okay, yes, but no, they could never see the person. All they could hear was the person's voice. And so what would happen was when they would administer a shock, the person, who were just actors, they're just hired, you know, the person on the other side would go, ah, or ooh, or whatever. But no, they could never see who they were hurting. That's good, thank you. But we'll watch it. You'll see. You'll see how it happened. Here's a picture of it. Here's a guy going through it. But we'll watch it on Thursday. It's not that long. Little documentary thing. God bless you all. I will see you on Thursday.
Yeah.
See you, Ms. Durant.